Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from Canada in the province British Columbia. And the people say, oh, we know where Canada is, in British Columbia on the west coast. Right, we are in central British Columbia. Today we got a very, very interesting guest. His name is Wes Towers, and he is joining us from Australia. And it's 3 in the morning in Australia, actually. Wes Towers runs Uplift 360, a digital agency for builders and trades. Wes is the founder of Uplift 360, a marketing agency he built from the ground up more than 20 years ago, having learned business and marketing through real world experience. I like that part, rather than lectures and halls. Wes brings a refreshing, authentic, and practical approach to helping trades and construction businesses run websites and SEOs. Don't know exactly what that means. We'll get it explained. Into consistent, qualified leads. And Wes also is an author, and we'll talk about his book. This is the book here. We'll talk about that as well. And he is a presenter, and he's an entrepreneur extraordinaire. Wes, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, John. It's a real privilege to be with you. I realize you're coming up to nearly 500 shows, which is phenomenal. So well done on that. And it's a real privilege to be on a show like this. I've been on a few podcasts of recent times, but probably none of such a high caliber. So thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you, Wes, and you have a very, very interesting bio and areas that really draw my attention, doing things from the ground up, for one. That's what I did with the companies that I have, started with nothing, and then virtually, and couldn't speak the language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job. And then real world experience is very important to me, especially in North America. And so in taking a practical approach to trades, I like that. And then the other part that draws my interest with you is that the discussion about AI, artificial intelligence, which is changing the world as we speak. For those that believe still that the genie will go back in the bottle, no, it doesn't. In fact, it may well proceed. And I was there in the early 80s when the first computers came out, and I was even further back. Actually, 2 days from now, I will be 85 years young, and I was born in northeastern Holland. I still remember the first television in our little hometown in Holland, and everybody went to the place that had the first television, and it was snowing a lot, and we were watching and see, there you go, there is another, oh my God, can you believe it? We've come a long way since, and AI is just the last step in that process. But so, Wes, tell us a bit about you, your background, where it all started, and then that brought you obviously years ago already to Uplift 360, and then we'll go from there on forward. But first, give us some of your background.
Yeah, sure. So it really did start with a naivety with starting my own business. I had a great skill set. I knew what I was doing. When I studied, similar to what you were saying, I've been around a little while, and when I was studying, website design really wasn't a thing. So I moved into graphic design. I studied graphic design multimedia at uni. Got my first job in a Sydney company, award-winning marketing company, and they'd never designed a website. So just like the progression you've seen over your journey through the many years, starting out for me in an award-winning marketing company, never designed a website. So far, marketing has changed over the years. Nearly all marketing these days is online. But they won a project and to do a website, and they said, right, you're the young guy, better figure it out. And I found that I did it. We delivered that and delivered many more websites from there. But as an employee, I really discovered that I love the technical and the design creative aspect of it merged in together. And so a few short years later, I started my own business, and that was a really naive step because I had no understanding of business. At that point, I had a great skill set, but no way. I didn't know how to market it. I didn't know how to get new clients, how to put a proposal together, how to do a quote, how to do bookkeeping, all of this stuff you need to learn. And I learned the hard way, but got through and eventually made a success of it.
In particular, what I saw, trades and construction businesses got your attention, and in their websites or the lack thereof that you started working on developing. The other one that for our friends watching us from around the world, SEO is an acronym. I know, but for our guests watching us, share with us what it means.
Yeah. So firstly, with my niche, our niche that we worked for. So we do websites, we do SEO, and we'll explain that in a second. But it's digital marketing. We're a digital agency, and so we decided to niche in over the course of the years, more particularly in the last few years. Really dialed into our niche because we found all of our very best clients. Well, the majority of our very best clients were kind of in the same fields, and they were trades, construction, building materials. And so everyone said niching is a great thing. And the niche found us more than we finding the niche. And it came unexpectedly because I'm useless at picking up a hammer or all those screwdriver or anything. I'm not very handy at all. But for whatever reason, I relate really well to those companies, those founder-led businesses. They're practical, down to earth, pragmatic. And they appreciate the communication style I have. I think that's why we build a really strong relationship. And I've learned what marketing for them works and what so what I learned for one client can be quickly applied to the next client because we're in such a niche, and I learn what they need. So that's that side of things, the trades and construction. But the SEO, that's a really interesting aspect of marketing. So SEO stood for search engine optimization. It's an attempt to show up in Google as highly as you can for as many phrases as you possibly can. And so back in the day, and it's a little bit still true now, but back in the day it was really clear. So you would try and rank for as many phrases about your business as you can. So it might be plumber, Melbourne. Yeah. And then so you would get as high as you can with the keyword, you get traffic, you get the end result, the sales. Things are changing so fast in that space now. We're calling it search everywhere optimization because they're not just using Google, they're using a broad range of tools. So it's fun over the last few years.
Yeah, hence, why the naming of companies was so important, because if you called it Acme whatever, then that's the first one, hopefully, in the phone book, so that if people look then way back then, then that's what was done. And then obviously all of that has changed, and what then even took it further is obviously AI, where all of a sudden everything is still very much evolving as we speak, but that is now part of our lives and will become much further into it, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, as we go forward as well. So the other thing that I noticed about you, Wes, an observation that I made, you're an author, you're a presenter, speaker, and then you're active in as you indicated it, with trades, and so as well is you're a very effective and good communicator, and all of those skill sets fit in the category of communication skills. And actually I wrote a book about that as well. My last one that I did is A Billionaire. It's about communication skills. The book came out in July 31st, actually is the 5th one that I did. Is that it's not how to become a billionaire, although I love you to try to in a general sense, but more than anything is what made them successful in the areas they were in. Every single one that I'm referring to it was communication skills, either acquired in most cases in some form or fashion, that made them successful, and is critical, even more so now, not taught well really in our learning disciplines that in Europe, in North America, and I presume not much different in Australia is that we are not proactive enough in developing communication skills. May that be in writing, interacting on the internet. AI will become part of that. Being a presenter and being an author, all of those relate to communication skills.
It's brilliant, John. And I think there's never been a time in history more important to have great communication skills. So the time is right for your book. It's obviously been around a little while now, but it's never been more important to sharpen up those things. I think that were the key lessons in the early days of business. Whilst I didn't have all the practical business skills down, so I didn't know how to do invoicing, for example, and so on, the biggest thing was to learn how to communicate to potential clients. So one of the best things I did in the early days was join a networking group of business leaders. And the advantage of that was the requirement to stand up each and every week and present on my business for a minute. As a young guy in a room full of business leaders who were well established and doing really well, it really pushed me forward and helped me learn how to communicate publicly and even just one-on-one as well. So you would meet with these business leaders for a coffee from time to time. And that just sharpens you up, I think. To do it by practice and to learn by experts is the way to go for sure.
And that being said, I just want to add something to it, Wes, is that for myself, it was the same. I was not very effective in communication skills. I was born in Holland, and actually in northeastern Holland in 1940, and in a province where we spoke dialect. And the dialect, even if I would go to the rest of Holland and speak High Dutch, they wouldn't really understand me. In fact, they kind of look down on it. They say, oh, I can hear in the accents, those are farmers, so don't amount to much. And then the time that I had to change was when I was 18. I was drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2.5 years, and we had to speak High Dutch. So that was a challenge for me, and I barely got that part under control. And then I decided my dream was to go. We were liberated by the Canadian Army on April the 12th, 1945, and it made such an impression on me that I knew when I grew up I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And I did when I was 24. But I could speak English, didn't have a job, didn't know a soul, and I wanted to start with nothing and to build a lumber mill. And so, and I came to Canada. I know the trees were in British Columbia. And so I flew into Montreal and then took the train across Canada, 4 days, 5 nights. My God, that is a long way. Anyway, so then when I came to British Columbia, to Vancouver actually, and I went to the immigration office, I could speak English. And fortunately, there was a German fellow. And I told him I wanted to build a lumber mill. He said, go to Prince George. That's in central British Columbia, about 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers for our European friends. And that's what I did. I went with the bus. And so Greyhound bus actually to Prince George, 12 hours, 13 hours. And I'm still in Prince George today, and I can see still 2 blocks away or so is where the Greyhound station was. And I started with nothing and couldn't speak the language, didn't have a job, didn't know a soul. And I came off the bus and I had my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I counted my money at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But what I did have is attitude. I've always been positive. Even now, I avoid negative. If you're negative, don't even come close to me. And then passion. Whatever I do, I give it 125%. And then work ethic. I work harder than anybody, even still now, nearly at 85. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed, and I always think I'm late. And the one challenge that I had, though, is that I was conscientious. I was very successful already early. Started as a cleanup man, lumber parlor. Then before I knew it, I was a superintendent. Then a year and a half And then within 10 years, I started my lumber company. But communication skills were a challenge that I had. Self-confidence being one of them. I was okay talking to people, 2 or 3 in my companies, but outside of that, I wasn't. Until I was already here for, I would say, in 1990, I was already here for close to 30 years, really, or 25. And so somebody said to me, why don't you go with me to an organization they call Toastmasters? And
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with that in Australia. I would believe that likely
Yeah, we have it.
It's all around the world, in particular North America. And so I said, okay, what do they do there? He said, it's communication skills. And I said, are they going to ask me questions? He said, no, you just sit and watch. And so halfway through the meeting, I was watching, and halfway through the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us all about you. I said, oh my God, I'll never go back here. But I did. I stayed there for about 10 years and then got a DTM, a Distinguished Toastmaster, and it's the highest level in Toastmasters. It did change my life. There is no question about it. One of the elements that changed my life.
Yeah, it's really good to hear how the struggle you went through. And I think those that need to fight and struggle through a certain thing. So for you, having a different language is always going to present a challenge for communication, obviously, but as a starting point, and then to learn and grow. I think those that need to struggle are the ones that do grow. It's like people who are born into money, oftentimes they don't appreciate money because it came so easy. And so then they don't create skills to create more money. You know, it's kind of like building muscle, as you're aware of. You get to the gym and you've got to stress and strain that muscle to a degree in which it learns to adapt and grow. And that's true of every aspect of life. And certainly, I think for you, John, and other entrepreneurial spirits, they are prepared to push through and fight and figure out how to move forward because they're positively geared. They can see the future and move towards a greater future. So whilst things might be difficult at the time when they start, by the time they finish, they're so far more forward than others who never really started properly in the first place.
Yeah, and going to Toastmasters was in 1990 for 10 years till 2000. So I was then already 50, obviously born in 1940, and but it changed my life. And one of the most important parts about acquiring the communication skills, contrary, a lot of people ask me about it, say, what is Toastmasters all about? Well, it's probably 20, 30 million people around the world, including Australia, obviously, that have been part of it in some form. Some people for a little while, some people do it more. I was in there for 10 years. And then there is clubs all over the place in North America. They're probably the same in Australia, same in Europe. And so what I find is the most important part about Toastmasters is to acquire the skill, become a good listener. Is the most important one that is taught to you as a Toastmaster. The second one is to, on your feet, digest questions, diagnose it, and articulate answers in your mind on your feet. And so that's an important part. The other one is evaluating others in presentations. And then the last one is to preparing presentations, which I do frequently, and obviously I do virtually. I would have never been able to even think about becoming a podcaster or writing books, or all those other things are all part of being a Toastmaster. But one of the most important parts from my experience, and with a lot of other, public speaking is feared more in a lot of cases than death. And so to build the confidence and then acquire the skills around it is very, very important. But confidence is important. And all parts of life, as you well know, are important. Communication skills is not something that is taught really well, in my opinion, in the educational system, right up to the levels of universities and even into senior levels of management. In a lot of cases, people are not good and effective communicators.
Yeah, 100%. I joined a group, Professional Speakers Australia, which is an association here in Australia for professional speakers. Now, I didn't feel as though I fully qualified, and I didn't really. So they had me as an affiliate member, so not a fully fledged member. But it was a fantastic thing. So similar to Toastmasters to a degree, but it was only for professional speakers. I actually got invited by the I think he was the chairman at the time, and did a presentation, a little workshop for them. And at the end of it, he said, "Hey, do you want to join our group?" And I said, "Yeah, but I'm not a professional speaker." And he said, "What are you talking about? You just spoke to the group of us just now, so you should join." And so I did that. But it pushes you forward to join things that take you outside of your comfort zone as well. So anything that can progress you forward, hanging around with a high caliber of people that you interact with are the people that rub off on you and influence your journey. So it's really important to have great mentors in your world as well.
Exactly. So talk a little bit more about Uplift 360 that you started. The focus was on marketing, and in particular to trades and construction businesses. Talk about that a bit, how it started and how it developed.
Yeah, so starting out, it was just a little I always wanted to start my own business, and a little opportunity came up. There was another guy that I knew, and he had tried to start his own business and been doing it for a couple of years, I think. And he decided it was all too hard. He wasn't getting enough work. He was going to try and get a regular job again because it was just too difficult for him. So I said to him, "Hey, what are you going to do with your existing few clients that you still have remaining?" And he said, "Well, do you want them?" I said, "Yeah, sure. I'll start with that." So I started with the scraps that he left behind. So it really wasn't much at all. So it gave me something to start with, and to teave into business, I suppose. And those first couple of years, that was just part time in my own business. So really a freelancing business, but then eventually built out a team and a fully fledged business. But in the early days, I just took any work on any work and every work for any client. I didn't niche in at all. It was doing websites, graphic design, logos, flyers, brochures, whatever people needed, I was doing just to have enough to create an income. But it wasn't ideal because what that meant was I was taking on work which really wasn't a great fit for what I did. And it became more difficult because if I took something on that was new, I had to learn it all, and it wasn't so profitable because I was just burning so much time figuring out how to do it. And it's just so much stress and headaches as well, moving outside the field of what I was great at. And so, but it felt like a brave decision to niche in and be specific and do only the things that we do really well. And that's the trades and construction websites and the search engine optimization. So it always feels like a brave decision to cut off some of your income for something greater. Sometimes we've got to leave behind something in order to get the new, bigger and greater thing. So that was the journey that I needed to take over the 20-something years that we've been working.
So Wes, timing is everything. So what I see if I look at your background is 20 years ago, in the early 2000s, for all intents and purposes, social media, web browsing, websites, and all of those things that you now specialize in were still relatively new. They were still just coming from the, as we said, Acme whatever company, going to the phone magazine, and so we don't even have those anymore. But so we were evolving from there. How do you get in front of your customers? How do you make the product or whatever that may be, how do you make it attractive? How do you create interaction and develop a company, for your clients to make their business attractive, especially looking at trades and construction and in other areas likely. So all of a sudden you became very, very effective in those areas, obviously, And as timing worked on your side, developed further and further and further, and now again we are on the threshold of change and introducing AI as one that will have an immense effect on everybody, and every business will be touched by it. But the other part that is important is strategic planning looking forward. Where will it be? How will it affect everybody in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and forward? And what will it look like, and how can we position ourselves with our companies? Because although our companies are different than yours, but we will be affected by AI and AI-related changes to our manufacturing sectors, as well as all the other things that we do.
Yeah, and it's realistically, it's still early days with AI. It's only been around really a few years for the general public to be using it. So it's kind of, we're at the stage like TV. You mentioned the snowy TV where it started out black and white snowy TV. We're probably at that stage of AI. So imagine what it will be in a few short years away. You know, it's hard to comprehend what it might mean to business, but and to everybody. So realistically, every business is going to be impacted by it to some degree. So everybody needs to start thinking about what it might mean for in their circumstances, and try to predict and foresee what might be, and what adjustments they could make now to ready themselves, because there will be businesses that go under, because the change it will always cause that. So I mean, it's a scary and exciting time to be alive, and for entrepreneurs who are geared towards the future and progress and make changes, we could do really well in this time if we position ourselves right for the changes.
So the interesting part about it is that hundreds of billions of dollars are being spent in companies that want to lead the way or be proactive and on the foreground of AI, and other existing companies like Facebook and Google and on and on and on are incorporating different forms of AI. And so, and the obvious little that I know about it, although we introduce it into our companies and we are being affected by it in some forms already, is that it will become part of the future. There's no question about it, and it then becomes a question of how will it affect the things that we do, and how will it change it, and and how can we become more competitive, even in our operational side. I don't fully understand it, even other than that a lot of AI, the huge amount of information is all based on data, and huge organizations are built on just collecting data, and then the speed in which they can research through that data in order to find direction, that no matter what you put in there and your AI related, it may be Google adapted to AI or whatever it is, within seconds you can have all the information. And so one of the interesting part that I did is when I wrote this book, this one here is my fifth one. I wrote the other four. But I did also an audio on my books, all the books that I have. This one, we experimented with it in saying, let's do an audio on this book through AI.
Oh, but wow.
What we do is do it with my voice. And so this whole book is done AI related, using my voice. And I cannot see the difference to it, or any other people that know me, because I have hard to believe, but I have a bit of an accent, obviously. I always think the other guys have, but I have somewhat of an accent, and so uniquely, that's what we did with this book. Sounds exactly like me. Hard to imagine.
It is amazing. Amazing, isn't it? So I was watching or listening to a YouTube. It was meant to be from Alan Watts, the famous speaker who spoke about a lot about Eastern religions and meditation and all sorts of things, mindfulness. And I was listening to one of what I thought was his pieces of work, and it sounded exactly like him until he was talking about social media. And I thought, hang on, he didn't live in a time where there was social media, but it sounded authentically him. I was totally convinced I was listening to him. So this is amazing. There's so many powerful things about that. You can write your own book, but also the negative consequences of AI is other people can potentially use our voices, and there's all sorts of risks associated with that, isn't there? So
and that's already happening right now. The awareness and but will it stop it? Will they be able to stop it at this point? Will the genie go back in the bottle? No, it won't. And in fact, between all of that and all the things that we do, I spend a lot of time. We have my businesses are 4 silos actually. The one is lumber manufacturing, and then the other one is warehousing, distribution, and logistics, and the other silo is real estate, residential, commercial, and industrial, and the other one is media. And the media, I'm an author, I'm a presenter, and then obviously I do podcasting and kind of looking at potentially a platform of some sort, and and kind of watching. So how will it affect all the things that we do on the lumber manufacturing? We employ a lot of people normally, although things are a little bit depressed, to put it mildly, right now. But when things are all back to normal, AI will play a role in our manufacturing as to what do we do with the manufacturing? How can it be changed? And even to the extent that in some of the companies that are operating, in particular in mining, working with huge big trucks and moving a lot of material into locations where they further processes, extract whatever the mineral is, if it's gold, copper, magnesium, whatever it is, and then from there and then package it into containers of some sort, and a lot of that will be done with AI. In a lot of cases, it will not even have operators on their big trucks. And
yeah, so, it's amazing.
Isn't it amazing? And so all of a sudden, that's where it goes. We can see it already happening in obviously cars, and then but in our daily lives, it is already part of it, and so a lot of changes.
Yeah. Now, yeah, I mean the mining is industry because they've used robotics for many years wherever they can to help to move large volumes of material. But imagine when that combines with a greater level of AI, so that even the operator isn't really needed. It is a challenge for a lot of people because it's going to displace a lot of work, and so people need to rethink what their career path might look like in the future, and what the changes might be. And there's going to be some winners, and there's going to be a lot of losers in the new future.
But the one thing we know for sure that will not change: become a good communicator as you go through life. And then the other part is that become knowledgeable, develop trade sets. I remember my grandfather was a master carpenter, and he still had, I never knew the guy, he died early in his 40s, but he still has examples of what he built in churches in Northern Holland. And I can look at that, and those kind of things you cannot replace. So if you're very good at the areas that you do in terms of skill sets, even uniquely what you do, you cannot replace with AI, because it is a combination of communication skills, 20 years or more experience of what works, what doesn't work, and having gone through the hands-on learning process that you went through, I went through. Those are difficult to replace, and those will always be, I believe, specialties that are required no matter of what happens with AI, because I will incorporate AI to my benefit and what I do, and it will benefit us if we do it well.
Yeah, it's so true. It's those that are experts in their field, that they do their whatever it is really, really well, are going to do well in life and business. But those that are generalists and are good at a broad range of things, potentially they might be left behind. It's kind of like the analogy of having a GP, a general practitioner doctor, or a specialist doctor. Who gets paid the most? It's the specialist, because they're great at that one thing. And when you need that one thing, you want the very best. And for us, we need to be the best at websites for our niche. So we need to understand our niche really well to give them a greater level of service, and to be able to communicate on their terms, to understand who they are and what they need and what they do, and to listen. Your point about listening is so important in every aspect of life, really, but for business, certainly it's important.
So the other thing that I'm looking at right now, the Simple Manifesto, is the book that you wrote, Marketing Principles to Save Your Time, Increase Profit, Create Your Dream Business in a Snap. So
yeah, I'll show you. I've got the physical.
That is the real one.
The real one, yeah. I wrote it 10 years ago now. 2015 it was. It must, 10 years ago. So it was a great journey, even just to write it for my own development, to put a language around the thoughts and skills and the values and tips that I believe in. So the process of writing was really wonderful. I enjoyed it. And for those that purchased it, it was great. There hasn't been many. I see the trail of sales from time to time kicking still, but certainly when it was released, it did much better than it is now. But it's still true and relevant in there. It's basically the marketing strategies, tips, and beliefs that I hold firmly about positioning and your brand and your values and how you stand out in a crowded marketplace. And that's more true than ever as well. Similar to your book of communication, you really do need to have a voice and a message to share with people that's valuable.
The other book that I did before that is you touched on it, and being, and especially for me, is that living young, dying old is quality of life issues are very, very important. And then going to the gym, I do that, and I will do that again today as well, that's a picture of me here. I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. And I started it just for fitness. And then after I did that for a while, somebody said, "Hey, John, have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Really?" Yeah, and I was already in my 70s, and I did. And I competed in Northern British Columbia bodybuilding, and physique came in second and third, and physique, and then provincial, and then that qualified me for the nationals, as well as the Arnolds. And now again, I'm training for the Arnolds in 2026. And so, but it's all about quality of life.
Yeah, 100%. It's so important. I mean, there was a few years ago now that my health really had deteriorated. I'd put so much emphasis on growing the business and things, and the stresses of all that. So my weight was really out of control, and my health overall was really struggling. So it was a wake-up call really to start to improve that. And so I joined the gym. I started to eat healthier. So I go to the gym probably five times a week typically, so the weekdays typically. And it's a real game changer. So just doing that improved business really, because all of a sudden you're showing up more vibrantly, you're feeling better, you're presenting better, you're speaking better, you're just a sharper mind as well as your body, as your physical body. So it's so important, particularly, so I'm 47 now. So they always say after 40, you really need to start focusing on your health because it'll start to degrade.
And so critically important. Like for me, it was later than you, but my wife is vegetarian, and I didn't do as well as I could have. I had a shock. We can do a whole program about that, but just to sum up the elements
Yeah.
is that I had also a shock that I knew I had to take care of my body and going to the gym. I hired a trainer to work with me. I go 4 times a week, do a lot of strength training, and I enjoy it. And at the same time, I'm vegetarian. Probably my wife is vegetarian. I'm probably 90-10 now. And then I do all the shopping. If I go to a grocery store, I usually shop on the inside the store, on the outside where all the vegetables, the greens are, and I don't go in the
Right.
aisles where all the processed food is. If the letters are very small, it's probably
Yeah.
not good for me. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want
If
to
it
touch
comes
on
in a
some
plastic
other
wrapper,
things
it's
that
probably not.
we can do a whole program about, because I like the idea that fitness is so important in your life, as it should be in many others, and that it's never too late.
Yeah.
But just coming back to our discussion here, why do so many construction companies still struggle to stand online in this economy?
Yeah, well, it'll vary from nation to nation, but I think it's true of most of the world. We had a really big boom time in Australia for construction, so all the trades in construction were doing really well, and they didn't have to do much in terms of marketing. They were turning away work because there was an abundance of work here, so that made them lazy. And then by the time now, where it's a bit more difficult and construction companies are going out of business, they're going broke. There's not as much work because there's not as much money. We've got a cost of living crisis here, like much of the world has similar scenarios. So now all of a sudden they've let their website slide and they need to reinvigorate things. So they're needing people like me, which is great from my business, but they're needing someone to come on board to reinvigorate and to realign their website so it's precisely what they need to communicate to get the right quality of clients coming through the door and to keep their job sheets filled. So yeah, it's been an exciting time. Some of the difficulties that our clients typically struggle with is they're practical, hands-on, down-to-earth people. They started on the tools, whatever their trade might be. They work their way through the ranks to leadership in the role, and then they start their own founder-led business. So they love the tools and doing the work, but doing marketing isn't really their expertise. So that's why sometimes they let it slide, or once they get to a point in which they know they need to do something, they hire people like us. So that's kind of how it works. I think that's the key to business and to be a success is to hire people to do the things that you're not good at or prefer not to do. And then you get the best, and it allows you to focus on what you do best. So
And
that's the
rather than
important thing.
bringing somebody on board on a full-time basis, you can hire them when you need them. And as you indicated,
Yeah.
when things were booming in Australia, as they were in many other places around the world, the most costly mistakes made on websites is then, and where you need a quick fix, is to bring in an expert like that can deal with that and give you pointers as to what to do to bring it back to being more aggressive in the marketplace?
Yeah, 100%. Because there's sometimes doing it yourself or doing it internally with some of your employees who might not be specialists, but they might be able to figure it out and get it done. And that can be an expensive mistake. While it might feel like it's at no cost because they're employees and you're paying them anyway, the opportunity lost because you haven't got it done right. So it's not bringing in the same level of inquiries and the jobs that you're not winning because you went the cheap path, that's a costly mistake oftentimes.
So the question then becomes is what can an action does a business owner take today to lift inquiries? Because it starts with the inquiry, and now from there on in, you have to take the right responses to get in the door. Once you're in the door, then your skill set will do the sale. But how do you get the call or the email or whatever? How do you start with the inquiry?
Yeah, well, it's changed a lot over the last few years, particularly with AI. So, as I said before, we're calling it search everywhere optimization. So, it's an attempt to show up in large language models, for example, to show up on ChatGPT if someone's searching for a business like yours. So, and that's what we're helping clients to achieve. About a month ago now, a client rang up and said we'd been working with him to get him to show up in more places online. And so he said, we just want to tell you my experience. We've just won a $140,000 client, and said that's fantastic. How did you win them? And he said the person, they're quite a distance away, but they searched for the very best of what he does in Australia, and he came up. That ChatGPT said this is the guy who's the very best in Australia. So totally different location, quite a distance away. But ChatGPT said he was the best, and that was as a consequence of the work we've been doing to get him found and noticed. So you got to get found firstly and noticed and build trust so that inquiry can be made, and the sale is made with a human connection. So realistically, everything you're doing is pointing people to make that connection, particularly with a high-end sale. You may be selling cheap things, cheap $20 widgets. You don't need that human connection maybe, but for our clients, they definitely need to create a human connection.
See, in particular then, what would be important, how can smaller firms beat bigger brands online with limited budgets?
Yeah, well, that's when niching really is important, because you can be a standout option when you're niched for a particular type of client. So for us, we're only a small business, but we're trades and construction. So any construction related business is going to see our material. They'll engage with us on social media, for example, or the website, or they'll hear about us, but they'll know we do work precisely for them, not everybody else. So they intuitively know that we know a lot about their business, that the nature of their business. We don't know the nuance and the specifics. We can find that out. We know the basics well enough, and we know what has worked for other clients just like them. So we know what will likely work for them. So it can shortcut to success. So that's true for every small business, I believe. You've got to find what makes you unique and stands out as distinct. And that's part of communication too, to really distill down precisely who you are and what you stand for and what you represent and why you do things differently, and to communicate the value of that to the end client. So the right clients are attracted to you, and potentially the wrong clients will be repelled from you because you're just not a good fit for them. And that's okay too. Yeah. But you want to be really clear in your communication. It's all about communication, really, as your book puts it. So that's the key for any small business, to really be specific on who your ideal client is and go after them.
I always say with restaurants, and with a small restaurant we go to, my wife and myself frequently, and nothing special about it, but what they have is good food, good pricing, good service. And so there is no magic about it. Even now, is find out, the more you know about your client, small, bigger, if you wish, the more impressed the person will be that will make the decisions. And then the next one is to follow up, be different about it, saying, okay, how was the service that we provided you, or what else do we follow the companies that you dealt with and see what else can you do for them. Because once they understand that somebody that wants to provide the service to them understands their business, it creates a sense of loyalty.
Yeah. And that's so important, isn't it? Loyalty these days. And so there's just such a lack of trust with material online because it's so easily produced now as well. As you mentioned, the audio, you can create someone's voice fairly easily, or you can create a video that looks realistic, or you can write articles with the click of a few buttons. So all this material and information, there's a lack of authenticity sometimes with it. So there's a lack of trust. And the other thing too, people try and capture your email for information. So they'll give a free resource away for your email address. It's not really free. You're giving away some of your privacy. So all this trust, these things that erode trust, are so wreaking havoc in business these days. So anything you can do to stand out and build loyalty and trust and reputation in the marketplace, I think, are going to be key things. So they're the things I'm trying to focus in on more and more. And they're the things I enjoy, the human connection and the relationships you build through this wonderful journey that we're on.
So can you show us your book once more? It's still available on all the major...
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's available everywhere.
Yeah. Hold it a
Amazon,
little bit higher so we can see underneath.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so no, it's fine. Yeah. So the simple manifesto. So very interesting.
Yeah.
So the other thing, Wes, do you have contact points for other friends that may be in Australia in particular or outside of that as well? How can they contact you?
Yeah, so we do work with international clients. So it's no problem being an online business. We make websites. So being online is no problems whatsoever. So uplift360.com.au. So that's our website. You can book strategy meetings with me directly on that website, but also all the social media. You can connect through the website. You'll find everything there.
And then for all those people that are watching us, both Wes Towers and myself, we are very active on obviously podcasting, and Wes is also a podcaster and very active. And that if you like what we are doing, subscribe to us because it will give us encouragement. Like it if you do, or make suggestions, and share it with others. And we're always open to give us suggestions as to what else can we do. And so this podcast, as I indicated, Wes, we will release it as it is presented now. I do not edit anything to this or most of the other ones unless there is something major boo-boo of some description or another, but it hasn't happened in 485 so far, and I don't hope it will not happen in the future. So this one will be released in 2 hours. So by you can go back to your pajamas now, go back to bed, and then when you get up tomorrow morning, it should be available to you.
Brilliant. I love it, John. I love that you don't edit them. I think as long as we're not saying something that's going to incriminate us and put us in jail, I think it's great if it's as it is, it's authentic that way.
And that's why I do it. And then I release it within 2 hours. So you'll have it in the morning. And then let's stay in touch, Wes. It was a privilege to have you on my podcast. Let's make sure we stay in touch.
Fantastic.
Because we got an hour, because we can easily do another one about health and fitness and all the other things as well. We will stay in touch.
Definitely. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Wes. Take care.